And I'd like to talk about Jesus for a little bit. Jesus is a God that a lot of people don't understand because they only understand the New Testament version of Jesus. However, he does encompass the entirety of the Old Testament and the New Testament. As he said, those who keep my commands are those that love me. And also, in the Old Testament, what Jesus did is it speaks about the genealogies of the earth that God created. And then he chose Abraham, and Abraham realized that his father's workings, basically of graven images and metallurgy, however you say it, like forming metal, and engravings and such, how that was basically worthless, and he found the one true God, and the one true God led him out of a pagan culture, Mesopotamia, a city called Ur, where they would build ziggurats. And Jesus led Abraham, and also Abraham was with about 300 servants, I believe, something to that extent. And they would go out, and they dwelled in the land of Canaan. Canaan is where African Americans dwelled. So they were in Africa, but they weren't Canaanites. They weren't Africans. They were God's chosen people. Okay, so. And then Jesus made a covenant with Abraham, and what that covenant is circumcision. And that's why even today, circumcision is practiced on infants and such. And also, only today, people only talk about the medical aspect of it, but indeed, it is a covenant with God. For God's blessings is what circumcision is all about. To know that those are God's people, basically. That's part of the covenant, to show that you're God's. You're an Israelite, basically, is what it is. And people don't know who the Israelites are. Israelites don't even know who they are either, but they're everywhere because, like God said, they're going to be the sands of the seashore. So there's a lot of people out there who know who don't know that they're Israelites, but they are Israelites, and they don't act as such, which, that's the reason why God punished so many different people over time, and why people look at the Old Testament like, oh, that's incredibly evil, but it's not. It's just the way it is. So Jesus also, he killed 14,000 of his own people one time because they were disobedient to him, and he was angry. And Moses, wait, no, was it Moses? I think it was Moses. I'm pretty sure it was Moses and Aaron. And they had to burn incense really fast to God. Burnt offerings are still important and relevant in Christianity, even though people don't understand that. And they would even probably, maybe be a little confused about it or intrigued by it. But it is truly part of Christianity to give burnt offerings of the earth, basically, which I can get into more of these things later. But another thing about Jesus, too, is that he led the Israelites in battle. But first, let me go back to the conflict with various tribes, because people will say, oh, this was never their land, this is unethical. Well, God created everything, so he can do whatever he wants. His chosen people can have whatever he wants them to have. And Israel was it. But let me tell you a story about the Israelites. There was Abraham, and Abraham had Isaac, and Isaac had Jacob. And Jacob is the one who was known as Israel. He wrestled with who many believe was Jesus. And then, as the story goes, they wrestled all night. And Jesus touched his hip, and it broke his hip. So there's that. And then also, there's stories about Jesus at one point came down and killed the Philistines in order to recover the Ark of the Covenant, which the Israelites lost at one point from the Philistines. And Jesus killed 35,000 Philistines. Also, and you see, these tribes, they would start things with the Israelites. The Israelites were, for the most part, peaceful people, but as soon as they were betrayed, then God would lead them in battle to slaughter those tribes. Also, the Canaanites slept with one of Jacob's granddaughters, and then so Jacob's sons ended up killing Canaanites, basically a Canaanite tribe, and they lied to him and said, okay, if you get circumcised, we can merge tribes. And they got circumcised, and then Jacob's sons came and killed them because a Canaanite slept with one of Jacob's granddaughters. Um, you know, and basically they, I believe it was Isaac. Yes, it was Isaac who didn't want Jacob to basically mix his race with the Canaanites. He basically said, "Go and sleep with, go to this man, my brother, and his daughters, and basically find one of his daughters, work for him, acquire." I believe it was. Well, doesn't matter. I think it was Leah, but whatever. There was two daughters, two women that he acquired through like 14 years of labor. Took all the animals in the end, which became a conflict. Anyways, so what you have is like the beginning origins of Christianity before there was baptism, before even the Ten Commandments. This is what was going on. So yeah, so in this situation, the Canaanites defiled one of Jacob's granddaughters. A black man with basically a white man at this point, because at this point they didn't intermingle, and you can deduce logically, if you study the Bible, that basically Abraham was white, because he wasn't Arab, which Arabs descend from Israelites, and also Caucasians, the seed of Abraham. Okay, so when a black man, a Canaanite, ended up sleeping with Jacob's granddaughter, because of that, that's why they killed them. That's why today you still have, some type of racial tension between basically, black people and white people, even to this day. I mean, it still goes on today. Like the Bible says, nothing new under the sun. Okay, so, but mind you that also, like, interracial marriages and coupling isn't necessarily, it's not forbidden in the Bible, but it does indicate that the Israelites did not want to mix with the Canaanites, basically. And there's reasons for that, too. For example, you've probably heard of Nimrod. Nimrod was a Canaanite, a very powerful hunter Canaanite. But they were known for their sins. Like, they're the ones that decided to build the Tower of Babel in order to reach heaven. And so that's why they didn't want to, interact with them, have kids with them. You see what I mean? Because they believed that they were, basically, they were people that didn't do the right thing. They didn't do what was right in the sight of God. So that's why. And, like me personally, it doesn't really matter. Anyways, back to Jesus. So Jesus, at one point, he actually, another time too, is that he flew around a city. He was flying around it. And sometimes he would just come down from the sky, in the form of Jesus, basically, if you can understand that. Jesus, I believe, is, of course, the Son of God.